Today we're taking a look at one of the most anticipated character arcs in Netflix's One Piece Season 2, the moment Roronoa Zoro steps into the Grand Line. We'll talk about how Zoro's story in the anime and manga should progress in this season, and how Netflix can bring Zoro's spirit to life on screen. But before we start, I have to say this. You guys are my Straw Hat crew, and right now I really need your help. The channel is going through a major algorithm drop, and we genuinely need your support. If you like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, that would be amazing. If you're ready, let's begin. Zoro's storyline in the second season isn't just about entering a new sea. It's filled with moments that touch directly on his fate, his swords, and the fracture in his past. The importance Netflix gives Zoro this season could be critical to the success of the live action. Because Zoro isn't just the crew's fighter. He's the wall, the fuse, and one of the story's main carriers of emotional weight. When they arrive in Loguetown, Zoro's need to replace his broken swords becomes an opportunity for drama. Netflix needs to make Zoro's inner world more visible here, the pain he carries from Kuina's death and the weight of his promise to become the world's greatest swordsman. This is a city where Zoro doesn't just renew his weapons, he renews his identity. Zoro's first encounter with Tashigi is a powerful, emotional breaking point with huge potential in live action. That moment when Zoro is shocked, seeing how much Tashigi resembles Kuina, should not be softened. If Netflix uses close-ups, slight slow motion, and subtle echoes of Kuina's memory in the background, they can show how Zoro's hard mask cracks for just a moment. Because while Zoro may appear calm and cold to the audience, Kuina is both his pain and his motivation. Handling this scene correctly will be the key to conveying the depth of Zoro's journey with the sword. The Sandai Kitetsu scene in the weapon shop is practically Zoro's character manifesto for Netflix. Tossing a cursed sword into the air and daring fate itself is one of the most iconic moments in anime history, and it could easily become one of the most iconic scenes of the entire live-action season. What matters here is conveying the curse's atmosphere, a faint, ominous hum, the shopkeeper's terrified eyes, and Zoro extending his arm without a single hint of hesitation. Then receiving Yubashiri as a gift completes Zoro's image as the man who defies fate. Netflix should absolutely not rush this scene. This is where the meaning of all three of Zoro's swords solidifies. During the chaos in Loguetown, Zoro and Tashigi's second encounter can serve as the foundation for their live-action character tension. Zoro knows he can defeat her, yet he refuses to raise his sword, telling the audience that Zoro is not someone who acts purely with strength, but a warrior with his own code. If Netflix highlights Zoro's hesitation, Tashigi's disappointment, and the emotional knot between them with strong acting, they can establish a much more impactful marine pirate dynamic in future seasons. There is no hatred between these two, only a tension born from not truly understanding one another, and that tension is extremely valuable. As the crew enters the Grand Line, Zoro's role as the silent observer becomes a major opportunity for Netflix. Between Luffy's chaotic captain energy and Nami's survival panic, Zoro's "this sea may be dangerous, but I'm more dangerous" presence can be portrayed powerfully. The moment the name Baroque is mentioned and Zoro's face hardens, that can work as heavy foreshadowing in live action. Because Zoro's instincts are sharp, he senses the scale of the enemy before most characters do. Netflix should show Zoro not just as brute force, but as a strategic warrior. When we reach Whisky Peak, Zoro's real shining moment of the season begins. If Netflix handles this right, Zoro will have one of the most unforgettable scenes of the entire season. The town's fake hospitality, the music, the food, the drinks. Zoro acting drunk while actually observing everyone would be a brilliant character setup in live action. And when the bounty hunters attack at night, the entire scene belongs to Zoro. Netflix should shoot it with long, uninterrupted fight choreography, lit by dim street lamps, with Zoro cutting through dozens of enemies like a one-man war machine. This could be the cinematic moment that proves Zoro has surpassed the limits of East Blue. When Luffy wakes up and sees the town in ruins, his attack on Zoro is a perfect opportunity for both comedy and drama in live action. Netflix can use this moment to highlight the captain versus right-hand man dynamic more clearly. Despite Zoro's calm explanations, Luffy's explosive reaction shows how differently the two think, yet how deadly they are together. The choreography needs to flow like water. Zoro's sharpness and Luffy's elasticity should collide, making the audience feel both tension and amusement. This misunderstanding fight has massive potential to go viral. The entrance of Mr. Five and Miss Valentine becomes a live test of Zoro's strength. Netflix should portray Zoro and Luffy unintentionally fighting in perfect sync without sacrificing comedy. Zoro taking precise positions to counter explosive attacks, reacting sharply to Miss Valentine's weight attacks, and doing it all with an expressionless seriousness. This is exactly where his charm lies. Yes, Netflix may need heavy CGI here, but what matters is that every effect matches the precision of Zoro's sword movements. By the end of the fight, Zoro shouldn't even sound out of breath, making the audience think, this guy is in another league. In Little Garden, Zoro's competitive side emerges more clearly. As a warrior who respects the centuries-long duel between the giants, Zoro's perspective can carry dramatic weight in live action. Netflix should highlight Zoro's sense of honor here. Being trapped in Mr. Three's wax prison is a true character test. In the anime, it was a mix of comedy and drama, but live action could make it much darker. Zoro, considering cutting off his own leg to escape, shows his absolute lack of fear toward pain. If Netflix handles this with proper pacing and acting, it will answer the question, why does this man have the potential to challenge Mihawk? Once they escape Mr. Three's attack, Zoro's trust in Luffy becomes visible. Even when everything appears to be falling apart, Zoro's expression isn't panic, it's determination. Netflix doesn't need to dramatize this bond. Their trust is already a silent connection. When Luffy arrives, Zoro's shoulders relax, the problem is solved. These moments show that Zoro is the silent guardian, who hides his strength behind the captain, but steps forward with full force when danger arrives. During the Drum Island journey, Zoro's scenes may seem small compared to the others, but for live action they are incredible opportunities for character depth. While Nami is sick and Luffy and Sanji rush her to a doctor, Zoro being left alone on the ship and battling the storm gives Netflix a natural setting to showcase his endurance and control over his body. Training in the snow and icy waters with zero equipment shows not just physical strength, but mental discipline. Zoro is telling the audience, for me, the fight continues even when I'm alone. Netflix should frame these scenes quieter and heavier because Zoro's best character moments are when he speaks little but thinks deeply. The confrontation with Wapple's men is a perfect Zoro highlight moment. Seeing him enter three-sword style half-naked in the snow, cutting through attacks without caring about the weather, this is where Netflix can make the fight choreography shine in Season 2. What matters most here is aesthetic. Zoro's sword combinations, his unshakable balance on slippery ground, and his calm tempo while cutting down enemies. If the directors shoot this in a long take, Zoro's flow and charisma will stand out brilliantly. Some viewers might think Zoro being in the background during Chopper's story is small, but Netflix can strengthen these moments with the right pacing. For example, while Luffy and Sanji climbed the mountain, Zoro accidentally climbing the wrong mountain was funny in the anime. In live action, it can work both as humor and character building. Zoro may have a terrible sense of direction, but his determination never breaks. With the right comedic timing, Netflix can bring balance to the heavy emotional tone of Drum Island. Here Zoro quietly takes on the role of the Shadow Protector, watching over the crew. Once Chopper joins the crew and the journey returns toward Arabasta, Zoro's edges sharpen again. When Vivi explains the internal war in her country, Zoro's silence doesn't mean he doesn't care. It means he is calculating the scale of the conflict in his mind. Netflix can strengthen this moment with subtle expressions or short inner thought visuals. Zoro doesn't feel wars, he measures them. And when facing a warlord of the sea, Zoro doesn't see a dangerous enemy, but simply another step on his path to becoming the world's greatest swordsman. Everything he has experienced up to this point, accepting the cursed Sandai Kitetsu, defeating hundreds of bounty hunters alone, being ready to sacrifice his leg in Little Garden, Zoro isn't just Luffy's right-hand man, he's a force of his own. As Arabasta approaches, even Zoro's shadow should feel threatening. Netflix can reinforce this through facial expressions, short dialogue, and fight choreography. As the story expands, Zoro becomes a silent legend. Approaching Arabasta, Zoro's silent leadership becomes even more obvious. Luffy may be the captain, but when danger appears, the crew instinctively looks at Zoro first. Netflix can use this dynamic brilliantly. When the crew senses a threat, they wait for Zoro's reaction. Because he doesn't act with emotions, he acts with instinct and strategy. Establishing this hierarchy not through dialogue but through staging and camera angles would be extremely effective. For example, when danger approaches and everyone panics, Zoro, taking a slight step forward, says everything we need to know about his role as the crew's protective wall. As the Baroque Works threat grows, Zoro's view of the situation becomes darker and more focused. Netflix should highlight Zoro's personal philosophy here. If the fight is inevitable, strike hard first. His lack of objection to Luffy's decision to fight Crocodile does not come from recklessness, it comes from his understanding of fate. Zoro doesn't act according to the enemy. He acts according to his own objective. And if he wants to be the world's greatest swordsman, he can't back down from a warlord. These moments deepen Zoro's mindset, showing live-action viewers that he's not just a fighter, but a warrior with principles. One thing Netflix must especially emphasize is Zoro's relationship with pain and sacrifice. This man does not fear pain, he sees it as a tool. His willingness to cut off his own leg in Little Garden or train shirtless in the freezing Drum Island snow are living examples of his philosophy. I will give everything for sword mastery. If the live action portrays this realistically, Zoro becomes not just a cool fighter, but a deeply respected character. If they avoid this, they risk losing everything fans love about him. Netflix has to be bold here. When Zoro suffers, the audience should feel it. While the main dramatic focus of the season may seem like the Luffy-Vivi Crocodile triangle, the most consistent force that carries the story is Zoro. Luffy may make emotional decisions, Sanji may get distracted, flirting, Usopp may get scared, but Zoro always stands in the same place. At the center of the struggle, the warrior holding the spine together. If Netflix strengthens this aspect, Zoro becomes the season's stabilizing force. He doesn't need to speak in every scene. Sometimes a look, a sword movement, or a single step forward defines him perfectly. Every time the audience sees him, they should think, okay, now things are getting serious. In conclusion, Zoro's Season 2 storyline is the backbone that hardens the tone of the live action, deepens the character work, and transforms the Straw Hat crew into a true pirate team. If Netflix handles him correctly, the emotional distance with Tashigi, the fate-driven cursed sword scene, the dark charisma of the Whisky Peak massacre, the sacrifice in Little Garden, and the silent discipline of Drum Island, Zoro can become not just the best-written character of the season, but one of the best-written characters of the entire adaptation. If you'd like to share how you want to see Zoro's Season 2 story unfold, or which scene you're most excited about, drop it in the comments. I'd love to read your thoughts, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support truly means a lot. Also, let me know which character you want us to cover next. See you in the next video.